Hello, everybody, and welcome on the Lights on Data show. Today, we're going to see how we could grow in data literacy together. And we'll do so with our dear guest,
That I
Ben
have
Jones. Yes.
the pleasure to introduce. Our today's guest runs the company called Dataliteracy that helps people learn the language of data through on-site, virtual, and on-demand training programs. He teaches data visualization at University of Washington Continuum College. He wrote the best-selling books Avoid Data Pitfalls and Data Literacy Fundamentals. He is an accomplished author, writer, blogger, and keynote speaker. Everyone, please welcome Ben Jones. Welcome, Ben.
Hi, George and Diana. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
We're so happy that you're here and that we're talking about this, let's say, very hot topic.
Yeah, I'm excited I'm here too. You all are the winners of the 2020 Most Helpful Data Video Channel. So we ran the Data Literacy Awards, right? So it's like, I get to join the winner.
All George.
So. Yeah, we're so many people love your YouTube channel.
Yeah, we're definitely very fortunate to have that title bestowed upon us, and thank you for everybody that voted for the channel.
And I got my T-shirt on. Here you go. Thank you for sending it to me.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Looks great on you
too. I'm the data llama that wants no drama.
The no drama. I love it. Yeah.
Ben, let's start with the more high-level questions, but still important ones. How did you get to do this? Why is data literacy important to you, and why are you passionate about this?
Yeah, so good question. So I joined Tableau software back in 2013. I got a really amazing opportunity to run the Tableau public marketing team and help grow that platform.
Wow.
And so we would travel around and train journalists in conferences, students and professors on campuses. And the more I started doing that, along with teaching at the University of Washington, I started to realize that there was this major education gap where a lot of the software was evolving very quickly to have amazing, powerful features, but the critical kind of gap started to more be around people's familiarity with what it all meant. And, many of the people in my generation did not receive a formal education that prepared them to be effective in this world we're in. Where data is very ubiquitous and not just everywhere, but all important. So that's where I realized that there was a critical need to help try to close that education and skill gap. And so then I decided in 2018 to leave Tableau to start this company. And now we're kind of all about, helping people learn the language of data and, applying that to a variety of tools. And so it's very much a tool agnostic approach. At the same time, recognizing and trying to help people get their hands dirty with some of those tools. So that's the ideology we're trying to run.
I do want to
get their hands dirty and their data clean.
Yeah, it's a participant sport, right? You actually have to get in there. So
I do want to draw attention to your website here, dataliteracy.com. Please do check it out. It's full of interesting information and, of course, courses. And I love the fact that you can even take an assessment to kind of see where you stand and what your next step should be, plus all the freebies that you can sign up for. So
I think it's amazing that you got the domain dataliteracy.com in 2018. That's amazing.
There's a story behind that. Maybe for another day. But yeah, we bought that domain. And that was a nice thing that was available, and we were surprised, frankly, that it was. But that's really helpful because it definitely drives a lot of traffic as people are interested in the topic. It's nice that we become part of the conversation many times. So
absolutely. When you say we, who do you mean?
Yeah, so my wife, Becky Jones. In fact, if you go to our home site, and I know we're a tag team like you. So
Becky?
If you go to our Becky, she is the Chief Operating Officer of Data Literacy. So if you go to the site and you go to the homepage and you click on the play button in the middle, you watch a video all about Becky and actually our actual dog, Winston, who's a crack up.
I saw that,
Yeah, so he's a funny little guy, and he's kind of like our little he got us through the pandemic. But yeah, so Becky was at Amazon and really feeling the pain points of the exact problem that I'm trying to address, because she went to University of Washington for liberal arts, English, and now here she is knee deep in some 5-page SQL query trying to get data. She was a category manager there, managing luxury goods on Amazon. And she was like, why do I have, just so blown away and disoriented that she had to spend so much of her time getting access to data, making sense of data. And so she, in a lot of ways was part of the inspiration for me leaving Tableau and starting the business. As it took off, she decided to leave Amazon a year after I started it. And now basically we're a tag team. And we just have a really talented group of web developers, graphic designers, people we've handpicked in the area that we work with, to help us create content. So, it's a fairly small team and very nimble, but growing. So that's who we are. Yeah, thanks.
We know it's not easy to grow a business, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then the pandemic happened and we're like, oh, that's an interesting challenge. So, but, in a lot of ways, I think we were lucky because we had been moving to virtual instructor-led sessions and on-demand courses. So, those things in a lot of ways can transitioned well into the post-pandemic world. So yeah, we were able to keep things moving, thankfully. I know a lot of people weren't.
Yeah.
So,
I know for some companies, it definitely gave them the push that they needed to move towards this virtualization piece. And
right.
Yeah. Yep. I guess there's a silver lining in everything.
And you're good on camera, so it's fine.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I enjoy it's a topic. As long as I'm talking about something I'm interested in, I'm decent. But yeah, don't maybe put me on camera if I'm talking about something I don't know.
That's the same with all of us. Don't worry.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you something, but first I just want to say hello to our audience and hi, thank you for joining us. And hello, Kate. Very nice to see you over here this morning. And Scott is over here as well. Hi, Georgiana and Ben. And Edmund, always happy to see you, and Syed and Ravit and Yara and well, this is Tyler. That his name doesn't show up for some reason, but apparently he's going to talk to his company about this towards the end of the month. And Russell. Cool. So thank you, everybody. Sorry, I can't put all your names up here, but thank you so much for joining. So Ben, first of all, data literacy. What does it mean to you? Well, what's your definition on it?
Yeah, so I think data literacy to me is the ability to read, write, understand, and communicate with data. It's this broad range of skills that we all need to function in today's world, to read charts and graphs, deal with raw data, analyze it to see what it's telling us, think critically about what it is we're encountering, and then ultimately communicate with other people. So there's a lot there. It's a big enchilada of things in there. And so, I think we don't need to know it all at an expert level. I just feel like we have specialties, and almost thinking of it like a language, using that analogy, there are accents and even dialects within the broader language of data that we can learn, which is why working on teams is so helpful and effective, because we can partner with others who might be experts in different parts of this workflow, all the way from collecting data to actually using it to make a decision. And all along the way, it gets transformed, it gets stored, it gets opened up and analyzed. And so I think what we're trying to do mostly on corporate teams, organizations, is bring together people that have complementary skills so that as an organization, we're speaking that language fluently. So that's what it means to me. And so it's, it's oftentimes in the corporate context or organizational context, but I think we can also think of society as a larger, massive organization. So then at the society level, communities, even at the national level or global, are we effectively working with data as a species? And I think we're early in our development as a species. If you take a look at how long Homo sapiens have been on the planet, it's really just in the last tiny fraction of our overall history as a species that we've had to work with data in this way. And so I think we're like the baby learning to crawl. And my hope is that future generations will look back and maybe chuckle at some of the silly things we do with data and the ways we misuse and misinterpret it.
Well, and at the
But
same
then,
time, it's really growing exponentially. I
Right.
mean, just in our own lifetime, right?
Yeah.
From when we were born, we didn't have to work with data, and or our parents kind of, well, they use punch cards, so maybe that's
Yeah.
you could
My-
say that they did.
Yeah, that counts as that.
I remember my dad teaching VisiCalc, and he had a little computer software company in Southern California where we lived, and there was some of that educational software. We learned how to use a personal computer. I mean, people hundreds of years ago were using actually pretty surprisingly large data sets. I think it was just a specialized activity, and so much has changed about, like, when you change something in scale to the degree that it's changed, it really does become in some ways a very different thing.
So I am not a data person. I don't work with data, as a data analyst, whatever. But I've worked in business analysis, so I do have some understanding, and I didn't have it before. And then after I married George, then I got to understand even more what it means and why it's important. So right now, for example, when I receive, a survey, I tend to fill it out and to be very, aware of how my entries are, so that they're easy to read, so that they're correct. Because I know that at the other end, there's a computer or another person who deals with that data. So I hope that this means that I'm a little bit, that I
More
am
conscientious.
more conscientious of data.
Mhm.
And then I also, try to teach other people, or to try to teach other people to do the same. Or when I put in, for example, the address, I think about, okay, what is the right way to put in the address. So I want to I'm sorry, this is a very long.
Is there a question, Jenna?
Yeah, I'm trying. Just, wait.
I'm not the only one that's going to be long-winded on this call. That's okay with me.
So my question is, can you give me concrete examples of where people, not only in the organization, so as employees, but also in the real world, when it really matters to be data literate?
So I think what you're getting at with your relating the stories of the surveys and using addresses to find directions and all that is that we're all data people. We might not be analysts, but in some ways, every one of us has to interact with data in today's world. And so we need a certain level of familiarity with some of the important concepts. So to answer your question, how would just everyday people who maybe don't have a role in the data industry, if you will, or they don't have the word data in their title? Well, yeah, but think of last year, right? Like, they were trying to navigate this incredible unknown of a new pandemic and spreading cases. Is it cases? Is it confirmed cases? What does that mean for me? What are the rates? And how do I navigate my decisions about where I go and what I do? And so there was a really palpable example in 2020 of people all over the world. In fact, if you think about it, it's probably the time in the history of species when the most number of people in the world were looking at data about a single thing, which was COVID-19. Additionally, last year, we had some major elections and a lot of eyes on polling data and tracking the numbers as they're coming in. I mean, these are elections that have wide-ranging impact on our country and on our communities. And so those are other areas. And you can say, well, those are just thinking of it from the point of view of what's in headline news. But I think at a different level, what about our own health and fitness and finances? I mean, I just did 23andMe. It came back with some health data that I need to be aware of. Oh, I have a genetic combination that makes me predisposed. And actually, I thought 23andMe did a great job as I went through the app, giving me charts and graphs that I felt would be understandable by a very wide range of the population. What does that percentage mean? What does that mean for me? What does it not mean? So I think when we talk about our own family's finances, when we talk about our own health, we're needing to interact with data. I mean, even my Peloton, I'm riding my Peloton, it's giving me a chart of my activity, and I'm taking a look at that from the point of view of someone who's familiar with data visualization and seeing that it just lines up all my activities in columns, but it doesn't show me if there's a gap between those activities. And of course, there's never a gap in my Peloton activity. But if I miss a week or two, it looks still like I just kept doing it every day. So I guess, we need to have our radar active for all of these places in which we are consuming data, whether it's a chart and graph we see on a website or in the news, whether it's on our own website for our banking accounts, whether it's staring at us on the Peloton screen. All of these ways are ways in which we are interacting with data. And so if we don't feel comfortable doing that, that's a problem. It's become probably, an untenable problem for people. So how are we helping them close that gap? That's a big question.
That's a great explanation, as Ravid mentioned here too. And to add to that, I think the other side of the coin is that
Thank you for saving my question.
I was following. Yeah. Like me, I finally got to something that was maybe relevant, but it's I love these kinds of conversations. It's hard to get to the heart of the matter, right? So yeah.
And what I was going to say is that I think we also need to learn and understand when a chart maybe, or a visualization that's presented to us, or the way data is presented to us, maybe it's not done properly, or it's not providing us with the right context for us to be able to make an informed decision. And in a way, we're kind of being duped into something.
Yeah. Charts can be confusing. They can be downright misleading. Of course, they can be enlightening. It's a double-edged sword, right? I mean, there's a good side to it. But and the tricky thing with that is, a perfectly good chart for me that helps me do task A might actually be useless for you trying to do task B. And it has to do with the choices that the person who created the chart made in encoding certain variables in certain ways. And so, we try to cover that in our course, Learning to See Data. What are the ways in which we can equip people with the knowledge to ask the right questions to the people who are creating this information that they're supposed to consume in visual form, to have a dialogue with them about what it is they're trying to do and how perhaps the chart might not be helping them accomplish that. Now we can have a conversation to result in an improved display, potentially, hopefully.
That's very much needed. I feel a lot of companies, that's one of the issues that they're having, is that they're working with very talented, business intelligence professionals, data analysts, data scientists. But then on the business side, they're hard to articulate how they want that maybe information presented back to them.
Right. And on the data side, they're trying to pack as much as they can into these bloated dashboards that become the Swiss Army knife and don't really help anybody do anything real. They just maybe, give a little bit of an insight. Sometimes, not all the time. Sometimes they're very effective. And so understanding the difference between an effective visual and one that's ineffective is something that I think every company now needs to really, consider carefully on the heels of all of this investment that they've placed and all this time they've put into building graphical displays for their employees. Now let's stop and say, are these helping us do what we need them to help us to do or not?
Yes.
And if not, what are we going to do about it? Well, I think to have that conversation, you need to be able to marry the business domain with the data domain. A lot of times we do that via a visual, but is the bridge effective, or is it a bridge to nowhere?
Right.
So,
I'm actually reading a longer comment from Tyler Bethauser, and he says that he would like to see corporate required training to include data literacy course. And a very important point, basic familiarity with the key term in our space can reduce the fear and anxiety over data and AI. And this is so important. I think a lot of people, they just shut down when they see numbers and graphs. Because they don't trust themselves, because maybe they weren't good in math at school, and they didn't get those basic the basic understanding of how to.
Right. Yeah, we have a word for people like that, and we love them. Those people, we call them, they're data phobic. And they just see data and they just say, nope, that's not for me. And like you said, they've told themselves a story, maybe, and it may be maybe for reasons, but maybe not, that they're not good at math. But yet, I think when you really work with them, you start to realize that they start to realize, hopefully, well, wait a minute, actually, I do work with numbers. I do work with data. I do work with charts and graphs. And actually, we all have some innate ability to understand what we're seeing, to notice things like outliers. You see it, that little dot in the corner, so do I, right? What is that? How did I get there? Now we start to help them realize I need to listen to myself and trust myself when I'm having these interactions with data. That's a big part of the process. You're now going to de-escalate their fear. You're now going to help them. And I think Tyler's right on. I mean, it does come down to, what do these terms mean? And that can be industry specific. It can be discipline specific. I mean, if you're in marketing, right, and you're working with data, well, you're thinking about CTRs, click-through rates, or you're thinking about all these acronyms, all these terms. Now that's just a rate. Now that's very similar to a rate in the medical field, like, a vaccination rate. I mean, they're both rates. Okay, well then there's a common mathematical basis to what those ratios do, but the terms are different. So even though I might know the math behind a rate and know how to avoid pitfalls related to rates, now, because I might know this term, I don't know that term, it feels foreign, right? So I think Tyler's right. A lot of it gets down to helping people learn the terminology, and not making it some exercise, though, in memorizing terms. How do we make that something that's more practical than flashcardy, where now I need to learn all these terms? That's actually what this one, Data Literacy Fundamentals, the idea with this book and course is let's just get started. What are the terms? What are these different, forms of data analysis? What are these different forms of display you might encounter? What does it mean to have someone tell you a data story, or, encounter tables versus graphs? Why do I want to see one versus another? And they're both valid. Just to kind of get that process started for people.
Ben, so you have a book, so that's your book, Data Literacy Fundamentals, and you also have a course with the same name, right?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make sure
exactly
for the audience.
Exactly. Some people like courses and videos and quizzes and exercises, and some people just want to read the book. I mean, and they're really so you can pick. And then the next one in it is Learning to See Data. This one, these are my 2020 babies. These both came.
Wow!
I never thought I was going to have so much time to write in 1 year.
Perfect.
I wasn't driving anywhere. My car sat in my driveway for like 6 months straight. I had to get it out just to make sure the tires didn't go flat. So we wrote these and we turned them into courses. We're doing the same thing this year. We're on number 3 in the series, and then 4 later on in the year. So we're hustling, working hard, trying to build out this library. Yeah.
Well, congratulations for seizing the opportunity. Really.
It's been fun. Yeah, it's what I love to do, and that's why I knew I had to leave Tableau. As much as I loved working for that company, there was no way there was enough time to create like I'm creating now. So yeah, had to do what I had to do. So yeah, then one we're working on right now is all about analysis, so actually helping people start the process of rolling up their sleeves and working with raw data, thinking critically about it, preparing it for analysis, finding issues in it, analyzing it. Yeah.
So that's sort really, of level 3 of data literacy.
Right. Yeah. So my wife really kind of cringes every time this comes up. It's technically level 2. So this is so confusing. And why would we make the numbers confusing, of all things to make confusing? But this is level 0. This is level 0. And it's because when we launched the business, it's funny, we didn't think we were going to need this. And then we had so many organizations just say, we understand that you're starting with helping people read charts and graphs, and that's great. But we need something actually before that, which is just, what is data? How does it apply to me? And we were blown away. We said, wait a minute. So you need something that just tells people what is data? Like we don't even know what it is. Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Let's think about that. So then now we went and said, well, we need a foundational level 0. It's like, before you even build a house, you have to say, okay, let's put the foundation in place. So technically what we're working on right now is level 2, but yeah, it's a 3rd in the series. Maybe there's a teaching point in that. N equals 0 is the starting point. Yeah.
So Russell here had an interesting comment that he's considering data literacy to be multivariate. So different consumers require different levels of data literacy. So all the CTOs, CIOs, they don't need to be literate at the deep detail levels that the data engineers, analysts, scientists do.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So then in a company,
thank God, right?
how
Yeah.
right. So where do you start in to put together a data literacy program within the organization? What's
Good
the starting
question.
point?
Yeah, so I think the starting point is, so let's think of it in terms of breadth and depth. Okay, so let's start with saying, what is the big picture? Let's just see at a very low level, shallow level, the concepts across the spectrum. Now everybody sees that. Okay, we all are familiar with that. We all know we have a role to play along that spectrum. Okay, now let's help people. And so that's what we did with level 0. What does it mean? So some people are preparing data. Some people are data engineers and they're just building data sources and collecting data. And other people are analyzing it. There are other people. So, oh, I can see now, this is the whole spectrum. Okay, now that we have that common understanding of breadth, let's now go deep in these different lanes. And then try to build them in such a way that they're connected, not just isolated, like, oh, because that's, I think, the world we live in right now is, and a data engineer will come to me and say, I would really just love to know, what are people doing with these data sources we're building? How are they analyzing it? How are they presenting it? I don't know. I'm over in this lane over here and I'm just stuck there. And similarly, a lot of the people I know in the data visualization world who are making beautiful charts and graphs really don't have the foggiest idea how that data came to be. How did it get in the place where it is? And that's a big problem, because if they don't know that, they don't know what potential shortcomings might be inherent in this raw material they're using. So I think that's the answer to the question in short, is paint the big picture at a shallow level. Now try to build the ability for people to go deep all across this. And it's a process building it out. It doesn't happen overnight. And so we're just marching through trying to build them. At level 3, for example, is going to be all about storytelling and communicating. We're going to then, I think though, what we're going to do next year, we were thinking about this, is this idea of, so Russell mentioned CXOs and leadership. We've noticed a need just to address that specific audience, right? What do I need to know as a leader in order to help my organization thrive in this data-rich environment? I think that that's a special role-based program, because I think they hold so many of the cards. And as we've all probably seen and experienced, it's make or break leaders. Do they enable us to use data? Do they get the right people and set us free? Or are they really just limiting the process by using the old methods that they used to use to make decisions, right? So yeah, that's an important separate topic, I think, for leadership specifically.
I think all the people working with data in a company would be very grateful for everyone else to get some understanding of how important it is and how to deal with data. I think they will be thrilled. On the other hand,
yeah, it's nice to work. We've been on teams. Maybe if you've ever been on a team that's just really hitting on all cylinders as it relates to data, it's an amazing thing. I think most people maybe say they've probably never experienced that. And so we feel the pain points. It's kind of human nature. It's like, oh, here are all the problems, that's probably normal. Even a high performing team is going to have its own share, its own list. That's actually what we're trying to do with our data literacy score, which is a team-based assessment. We just work with organizations to say, what are your challenges right now as a team making effective use of data? Process gaps and blocks, technology issues, cultural issues, who's being rewarded and why, and does that relate to their ability to make use of data? The people themselves, do they have the right skills and knowledge or not? And so that's really that assessment to say, what's our baseline today? Because training's great, but if all you do is train, then the question is always, well, what good did that do? Did we actually go anywhere? Did it help us get better? Or did we just do training for the sake of doing training? And so usually to help avoid training for the sake of training, it helps to have some kind of baseline and some kind of way to gauge progress. And so that's what we use our data literacy score for, is to try to see before and after, did things get better or not?
You seem pretty good with data, apparently.
I've got so much to learn. It's funny. I think that's normal. You kind of wake up and go, oh my gosh, there's so much happening. It's so big. There's many things I'm clueless about in the world of data. So Yeah, I know some things. I know some things well, and I know other things not very well at all. So, but
Um,
yeah, but thank you.
I was joking, of course. So, Ben, I you were talking about this number, right?
Mhm.
This assessment.
Oh yeah.
At the individual level,
Mhm.
what are some type of questions that you ask, or what is the criteria that you assess
Yeah.
by?
So, okay. So we think about it in two terms. The team-based assessment is very subjective. It's a self-assessment. So there, we're asking them things like, you know, how well do your processes allow you to correct and clean dirty data, or are you working with data on your main objectives or on pet projects that aren't really moving the needle for the organization's mission? And so, people are answering those questions relative to their perspective about the team and how it's operating. So that's the self-assessment. We've been working a little bit one-on-one with some clients on a more objective individual assessment. In other words, does person A have the knowledge and skills they need to do their job? So with that, our courses have dozens of questions, quiz questions, and so we can use that in that bank of questions to just throw an assessment at an organization and the individuals within it to just simply say, okay, let's actually ask you some questions with right or wrong answers. They aren't just, what do you think about how things are going? It's more like, okay, if we show you this chart and we ask you a question, can you find the answer? Or it maybe also just conceptual. It isn't just about reading charts. And that's more of an individual objective assessment of their own knowledge and skills. And that's a separate thing. And that's something we don't advertise. It's more, we have been dealing with that on a case by case basis. But I think there's a need for that at a broader level. And, we've got our eye on that. And it's just something we haven't really been able to get across the goal line yet. It would be great if there were just some, widely accepted individual assessment that people could use to check their own
Right.
reading level. Like, I think of it in terms of a reading level. Like when we were at school learning how to read, you may be a fourth grader at a fifth grade reading level, that kind of yardstick, if you will. So that's something that I would be great to be out there. Yeah. Maybe we'll get around to that.
I agree. I wanted to mention,
Yeah.
so that group assessment that you're exemplifying, it kind of sounds like a data management maturity model assessment, if you will.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you have the maturity stages. So when we first launched it a year and a half ago, we just kind of arbitrarily, and we didn't love it. It's like, well, here's your scores, and if you have this range of scores, then you're at this level of maturity. And there's 5 stages for organizations. Now that we've been working with organizations and we have the data, we can say, let's map these maturity stages to quintiles, 20th percentiles. What do I mean by that? Well, if you're at the 20th percentile or below as an organization, you will say you're in stage 1. Now, if you're between 21 to 40%, that's stage 2. 60% gets you to stage 3, 80% stage 4, 100th percentile, 90, 81 and up, you're at the 5th stage. So we just remapped the score to something a little more meaningful and still arbitrary, putting it at quintiles, but at least you also get then with your score an idea of how you compare to others who have taken it. Now, we haven't had enough data to be able to say, well, what if I'm in the aerospace industry or the consumer goods industry? There's not enough for us to give you that. It would be great, companies like me, my size, my industry. We need more. We need to continue to collect more data for us to be able to do that. But we'd love to be able to do that at some point. Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to go back slightly to the question before what you said, about the reading levels.
Yes.
We talked about this even before the show, and about the idea of data being data illiterate, and that this is not a nice way to say it. And you explain that, let's just not say about, just not use the word illiterate. It's just different levels of literacy.
Yeah, no one's data illiterate. No one. I mean, like I said, you show someone a chart and you say, what do you see? They see things. They're reading it. And they might be confused and feel confused, but they might, if you really have a conversation with them, come to the realization that they actually are reading the data, the chart. And so no one is data illiterate. I don't use that word. I never say that word. It's just really a question. And I understand why that's a pushback that I've heard, from a very valid one, from people about the use of the word literacy, data literacy. Well, are you saying that some people are illiterate? No, actually, I'm not. I don't think anyone is. It's just all a question of what level, and are we progressing, and seeing it as a growth trajectory that everyone's on. It's sort of like learning to speak a language, a foreign language, in that respect. I guess the difference is that you start off somewhere other than zero. You start off already having, just by virtue of your visual cortex and the wonderful brains we have, the ability to start with some tools and abilities before you even know that you have them. But like a foreign language, you then need to build fluency. Like reading levels, you need to learn how to read more sophisticated sentences and paragraphs with new words that you've never encountered before. The more you do it, the better you get. And in that sense, just like speaking a language, it's an active sport. You have to actually participate in it in order to get better at it. And you also have to surround yourself with people that are good at it, because then it will start to affect you and influence you, and help you grow. But no, I agree with the people that say, there's a problem with the word data literacy. I agree with them. And so instead of just abandoning the term, instead I say, let's try to take illiteracy out of our vocabulary if possible.
Yeah.
Nicely said. So back to your corporate training model that you're exemplifying again on the different roles that require different types of training. I guess different roles would need to be at a different level of fluency in that their data literacy in order to be successful in that job.
Right. Yeah. So we tend to, at a really coarse level, we see really like two broad groups. There's what we'll call, and I don't really like the term, so I've been trying to think of a new term than data consumers. I just don't like it. I think it's more, it's sort of like the reading activity where I'm just taking in something someone else has created, like I'm reading a book, right? So like reading a book, there are people who exclusively take in data that other people have worked with and visualized and analyzed. So that's one group of people, and it's huge. In fact, then I would say those individuals just need to know 0 and 1, and maybe they stop there. Level 2 is where you roll up the sleeves, and now you're working with raw data. So that's kind of a differentiating point, right? And the question is, do you work with raw data or not? And when I say raw data, I don't just mean a table of numbers in the corporate quarterly report. I mean the actual transactional data, raw data, slightly different than the notion of a presentation with a summarized table of results. So with that, if you ask people that, do you work with raw data? And many times they'll just say, after they get an idea of what you mean by the term raw data, they'll say yes or no. So if they say no, then level 0 and 1 is almost always where they start, but then they stop. Okay, then the folks who are actually working with raw data, if they have data in their title or analyst or anything like that, then they definitely will need 2 and 3. But oftentimes I'm finding now that many people that don't have data in their title also work with raw data. They're just doing, like Becky at Amazon, she's writing SQL. She's like, what the heck? So she's not an analyst. She doesn't have data in her title. She's a category manager in the sales department. So, that would be an example of someone who is working with raw data, even though that is not their profession per se. They're using it for a reason. So those individuals typically maybe would start at 1 because they already know data and the terms and terminologies, what it is, how it's being used. They might just start at 1 and then they'll go to 2 and 3. I think there's a third group, which now we're talking about data scientists, and we're not there yet. We don't really have courses for that type of algorithm that data scientists are using to turn loose on massive sets of data. But that's something we'll get to in a couple of years at our current rate.
And you mentioned that people like to also know about the other roles and what kind of how they do things. So maybe the data engineer wants to know more about the BI developer and their needs. And so would you then have a data literacy training for the data engineer, which is about their role, more pertinent to their role, but then also a high level training about the data literacy on the other areas?
Like data communication for data engineers or something like that.
Hmm.
We don't have anything like that that's role specific. We just focus on how to communicate data well. And so the data engineer that might want to learn that can just take that course just like anyone. But I think it's a great idea. Can you create a flavor of that course that's really specific or particular to a certain audience? I don't think we're there yet in terms of our evolution, but I like that idea because I think that there are certain ways to teach those concepts to people that have a certain skill set already. Because then what you can do is help them draw links between what they already know and what you're trying to teach them. So as a teacher, as an instructor, you have an advantage because you have some awareness of what they know. So you can make some connections that otherwise, if you don't have any knowledge of what they already know, it's harder to kind of customize and speak directly to them. Hey, this is like that. This thing you're trying to learn, we can compare that to this thing you already know. Do you see how they're related? Now, this is how this concept stretches you beyond what you already knew. And I would love to get to that point. I think that's down the road for us, but I think it's a great idea. Yeah. Kind of taking every one of our trainings and saying, okay, how do you put a flavor on it now that's really useful for a specific audience?
Yeah. I'm still curious about the level ones. First of all, how would you bring them to training? How would you motivate them? And then my second question, which is related to this, is what are the challenges that you encounter when you teach this group?
Yeah. Okay. So first part of the question, how do we motivate them? We actually have this come up with customers. They say, because usually it's someone who's responsible for deploying some training within an organization, and they're saying, Ben, how do we drum up interest? So we do some things with that. We maybe do like webinars where we talk about the course and why it would be interesting for them. So those are things we do from an organization's point of view, drum up interest, in a topic. A lot of times it's posing questions that are going to resonate with them. I don't think I know the formula for that, that yet. I think the people that we are working with are people who are interested. Yeah. So what about even individuals? We don't just work with companies. I mean, you can go on our site right now and take the course as an individual. And a lot of what Becky and I are working on is, well, how do we get the word out? How do we actually help people? And then once we do make them aware that there's a course, well, how do we get them interested in taking it? I don't really know yet. I think that's something we're working on and trying to learn more about. But with organizations, yeah, we do have a good little kind of 45-minute spiel and then a 15-minute Q&A just to help someone see what this thing is all about, And I think with visual data, it's a little easier than with some of the other topics because charts are so visual and they're eye-catching and we see them all around us anyway. So you already can kind of show them things that are going to catch their eyes. So that's one thing there. What was the second part of your question again, Diana? So there was, how do you get people interested? And then
yes, and then once you get them in the training, what are the challenges you face with that group that is at the fundamental level?
So when we're teaching them how to read charts and graphs, right, the challenge is that, well, what are we showing them? I mean, they might be coming from any department. They might be in finance. They might be in marketing. They might be in R&D or HR. Okay, well, what are we showing them? Because the sorts of charts and graphs that each one of those people uses how do you make it relevant to them? Thank you. And so with that, we basically, when we're doing live instructor-led sessions, we have a set of charts we show them. We try to pull data. My theory on that is, I have a couple philosophies on that. The first is show them data about the real world. It's more interesting anyway, and they learn interesting things. And they have that experience where they forget that they're learning about a tool and more are interested in what the data is saying. And that moment is where they go, oh, I see that data can teach me something interesting. Okay, so there's that piece of it. The other piece of it is they need to actually see it, things that are applicable to them now. So with that, it's easy within the context of a specific corporate team to have them bring their own charts and graphs, and we have conversations about them as exercises or as their own follow-up homework where they're applying it immediately as opposed to waiting till the class is over and then trying to imagine how they could apply what they learned to their real job, So the other side of it is the challenge I have is how can we, in the moment, help them apply it to their job? And the answer we have there is let's have them bring examples and we'll go through them together as a group, have them present what they did to their own group. And those techniques are really also more interesting for adults anyway, because they get to be part of the conversation as opposed to just being talked at. So those are challenges we face and how we try to address them. I think it's still a challenge, though. It's hard to get that perfect, but we try.
Just want to take a couple of comments here. One from Scott that he wants to point out that it's really the same with data, that you do need to put that foundation in place. Anything that has to do with the data, really anything on data storytelling, on data management, data governance, you need.
Yeah. And hey, Scott, I love Scott's book. What is it called? How to Tell Your Data Story, I think. Is that Scott's book? I got to get a copy of that. I'll go order it today. But I think Scott's right. I mean, and here's the problem with that is that everybody is so interested in, and all the buzzworthy topics and all the SEO is around fairly advanced stuff. And so, but if you start there, you're now, like the proverbial literal proverb, building your house on the sand. I mean, if I go run ahead and try to make some sort of advanced algorithm work with my data, but I don't even understand the variables, where they came from, what are the units of measure, how are they collected, and what are the issues with that and how they were collected, then I'm going to get a lot of knowledge, but it might not be correct. It might be faulty knowledge. And so I think it helps to have a foundation, and it's an overused word, but it isn't a very sexy thing to tell people, oh, you better learn the basics before you try to learn the advanced buzzworthy stuff. But I think it's important. I agree with Scott on that one.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
From, when you used to have in-person trainings and,
Mm-hmm.
or not necessarily, but when you interact with people in your courses, if you think back, is there any example that of a person who had an aha moment or
Mm-hmm.
during your training, or someone who, I don't know, just was very excited about what they found out?
Yeah. So first of all, I love those in-person trainings. Gosh, it feels like decades ago. We'll get back to that, right? I'm looking forward to that. Maybe this year, maybe next year. I don't know. Knock on wood. I would love to. It was so nice to meet people and spend time with them. And so, I got addicted to people being part of people's aha moment. I mean, that to me is so exciting when they just realize for the first time, oh my gosh, I can do this. Oh my gosh, I have what it takes. So many people don't think they have what it takes. And so there are software. That was one of the fun things about being at Tableau is, you can just drag and drop and all of a sudden, boom, you're seeing things pop up on the screen and you're like, whoa, that moment where we saw that at journalism conferences a lot. We go to like the Investigative Reporters and Editors Conference, Online News Association, and sort of, helping people, these are people who would break out into hives when someone would email them an Excel file, right? And so then saying, okay, let's dive into this, and then spending a couple hours with them, walking them through the steps, helping them realize they could see that, and then watching them go on to just do amazing work. Like I got a chance to be in some of the early conversations with a fabulously talented journalist named Sarah Riley. At the time, Sarah was at the New York Daily News, and she was tasked with opening up their data journalism desk. This would be back in like 2014, I want to say. Mm-hmm. So we met her in Louisville, Kentucky at the NICAR conference and taught her Tableau. Now she goes way beyond that. That was an early step for her. She's, at ProPublica, and I think she just, she's been, now she took what she learned. And, tragically, I think you may remember Eric Garner, the day that he was killed in New York City. And so this was he's the one who had proclaimed, I can't breathe. And so this was not long after that, and she was in New York City. And so she spent all weekend, all day, all night diving into broken windows policy data. What this is a New York Police Department policy to crack down on little things like broken windows. And so she just scrutinized this data high to low. And when she was done, she published one of her first data stories about the fact that there was some racial disparities within that data that highlighted and kind of came on the heels of this Eric Garner tragic death, right? So when you're part of that and you see where that goes and you see how that just starts to take off and cause important conversations to happen, of course, I can't take credit in any of that, and I would never try to. It's just nice to realize that person that I saw get so excited in training, wow, they went on to just really like take that and run with it way farther than I would ever be able to imagine its usefulness, you know. So that's an example of, and if you find Sarah Riley on Twitter, you'll see that she's been just, she's grown so far beyond anything I could have ever taught her. That you know, that's also an exciting thing to realize that now I'm starting to learn from her. I'm starting to watch what she's doing, trying to figure out how she's doing what she's doing, you know, that kind of a thing. It's like, wow, you know, she's like, now I was at one point, I was her teacher. Woo, you know, like, hey. Now she's teaching everybody. So yeah, that's a fun thing to have happen, you know. It's like, wow, neat. Yeah.
It is.
Mm-hmm. So there's lots of stories like that, but that's one that comes to mind of a person that really,
for sure. Yes, it makes sense. I have another question, but if you had some, okay.
Go ahead.
For people with kids,
yeah,
how is there any suggestion or any advice that you have how they could educate their kids to be a little bit more data literate?
Yeah. So actually, I think Kate joined. I'm not sure if she's still on, but she and Jordan Morrow wrote a book for kids. Yeah. I know others in this space have interest in continuing to dive into K-12. And I had a chance to meet with the CEO of Tuva Labs, Tuva. Now, Tuva Labs makes like a super simple form of Tableau in the browser, where you drag data out into the screen and you get to look at interesting things like environmental data. And so they've had a lot of success with science teachers in public schools and private schools, helping them use science-related data sets to teach kids how to play with data. That's been a niche they've explored, that kind of early audience. But there's so much to be done there, you know. So I have 3 teenage boys that are going through, and I watch them go through the public school system. And, you know, they do teach data. They do teach it to some degree. I just think it needs to go from this amount to that amount, you know, based on how much things have changed. But yeah, those are some examples. I've done a little bit here. I remember one time I had a chance when I was at Tableau. I had a chance to present to an underprivileged group of high school kids from a low socioeconomic background, and I got to work with them and present them some data topics. So we tried to find topics that were interesting to them, you know, video game data, social media data, data about music, and speak to things that they liked. That's a thing I saw work with the Tableau public audience. If you give people the ability to see that they can use data to actually learn about stuff they're already interested in, sports teams, whatever it might be, then they're interested in learning more because it's fun and cool to them. So yeah, I don't know how well that turned out. I'd have to find out, but I did like meeting with them and presenting to them. They seemed like a really interesting group of people, you know. But those are just some, I think we're just right now as an industry dabbling in this. I'd love to know more about what can be done to help get kids excited about data, because they're going to grow up and they're going to take over this world of ours. And I know that for them to continue helping us evolve in the right direction and frankly turn around what we've got going in some ways, maybe data is going to be a tool and a skill that helps them do that.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, not the only tool. I think they've got to, you know, there's other things too that have nothing to do with data that we're going to have to help them learn so they can do way better than us, you know, fix some of our problems that we're leaving to them. That's a broader discussion maybe, but yeah, data's part of it. Data's part of the puzzle, maybe.
It is. So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Ben, so you have books. Those two books, if you can show them to us
Oh yeah,
again.
and that's a third one here. This other one,
Oh,
Avoiding Data Pitfalls. I
what is
published
that
through
about?
Wiley. This came out in November 2019. So Avoiding Data Pitfalls is about all the blunders and mistakes that we make, that I've made when we work with data. The
Mhm.
genesis of that book was kind of getting tired of hearing people complaining about nothing but pie charts, realizing that there's so many more things that could go wrong with data. It's not just about the chart choice, it's about how the data was collected and worked with, and what calculations were used, and how someone designed the experience, not just the specific chart. So it's trying to look at it and kind of define 7 pitfalls that turned into
Mhm.
8 at the end. I didn't realize the 8th pitfall until I finished proofreading the final copy on my couch here in Bellevue. And I just freaked out, and I jumped off the couch and I contacted my editor. I said, stop. I fell into an 8th pitfall. So I'll let you read the book and find out what the 8th pitfall was. But
Nice. I
had
love
to
that.
do with the epigraphs, the quotes. Those quotes at the beginning of every chapter, epigraphs, they call them. After I went through and read every one of them, I realized there was a big problem with the choices I had made. And so I had to fix that before anything got printed out. And I think that the of a pretty severe bias I had and I had not even been aware of is pervasive in data, when it gets to whose voices are being heard, So those are, maybe I kind of gave it away a little bit, but yeah, that's the 8th pitfall.
Yeah,
But
love
that's
it.
a book about the mistakes that we make.
Yeah,
So common.
that's great, and I love that everything that you do is actually either requested by a business or it is
Mhm.
based on vast experience from working with people and with data, which
Yeah,
is
I've got the
great.
scars to prove it.
Yeah, exactly. But that's where the most valuable things come out of, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So, and besides the
exactly.
books,
Mhm.
on dataliteracy.com, people can find your guys' trainings as
Yes.
well as an explanation of what the assessment is and how to do it to get it done by you.
Yep.
Is there
And check out
anything?
that blog. Yeah, check out the blog. We've been, at the end of last year, I said, our blog is dead. We haven't been putting anything into it. And it's been a couple months. We haven't even posted. All it is just announcements about our stuff. And I said, that blog is not where we want it to be. So we started working with some really talented people like Ali Torban, um, like Alan Hillary in New York City, and started saying, look, let's open this up. Let's get people to help us make this blog alive, writing about topics that are interesting, writing about questions that are coming up in this space. And so we're starting that process, and we've got more planned. You're going to see an interesting blog post coming soon about trust and data, trusting the data. There's another one coming soon about a how-to called the new tool called rawgraphs, rawgraphs.io. So, and there's yours. If you see the announcing the winners of the 2020, that's where you all
Yeah.
are mentioned in there. You can see John Schwabish. He wrote an amazing book called Better Data Visualizations. And so, yeah, and you can see here that there's Alan. He talks about, that was just our announcement that he joined our board. But in any case, yeah, we're trying to make the blog more interesting, more helpful. And
And
that's
you have Dr.
really,
Ina there too.
oh, right. Yeah, that's a great story about her personal journey, realizing that data science was something that was for her, and the fact that she did not think that at first, and why that's the case, and why that's maybe a problem, and how do we help people overcome that idea, that the preconceived notion that they might have about whether or not data is something that's for them. And so I love it. I'm real thankful that people have been willing to share their own personal stories on that blog. And like I said, we're just pumping more energy into it, and it's free. And we don't want just to be nothing but a place where people can go to buy stuff. That's never the vision. So we're trying to say, what other resources can we put out there? What other handouts? What other free materials, interesting conversations can we be a part of, right? So yeah, it's so easy just to get sucked into just chasing the money. It's important, I think, as a entrepreneur to stop and say, wait a second, like, yes, our calendar is full with stuff for clients, but let's carve out some time to make
Absolutely.
difference, make a
Yeah,
difference
and
in the
giving back
world,
to
you
the
know?
community. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. So I
absolutely.
think I'd still give us a C in that. We got a long way to go till we're really, really doing well there. I mean it. I mean it. We've
Yeah.
got a long way to go. We should have free courses out. We should have lots of free books. I mean, we make our books are $9, so hopefully it's not too expensive. But yeah, I think we need to go beyond that and just find other ways to make it good, to make it helpful. Because otherwise, right? What happens if you don't do that? Then the individuals who do not have access and to whom those doors have never been opened still won't be opened.
Right.
Correct. Yeah.
And so that's
true.
not what I don't think that's the world we want to leave our kids, a world where just the haves get to have more and the have-nots still can't get anything. So
Well
yeah,
said.
we need to work on that.
Well, we're looking forward
Yep.
to seeing more things coming out from dataliteracy.com
Yeah.
and from you and your
That
partner. And
training for CXOs.
Oh yeah, that'll be next year. Like I said, we're full. Pipeline's full for this year, but that's high on our list for next year.
Nice. So everyone check dataliteracy.com, check out the trainings, check out the blog, connect with Ben on LinkedIn, have a look at his books. There's so much that he has to share with the world, and he does it through everything that he does. And thank you very much, Ben, for
Thanks, George.
for
Thanks,
being
Diana.
here,
Yeah,
for
my
being here
pleasure.
today.
And thanks for all the people that joined. That's really it's nice to see so many familiar names. They're flashed on the screen. So hope you all have a wonderful Friday and a great weekend. And yeah, reach out. Let me know if you think we can work together in any way. We're all ears.
thank you.
Thanks,
Bye,
everyone.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.